let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about menopause. So it's obviously a natural stage of life, but it's a pretty dramatic hormonal shift, and it can be a challenge for a lot of us. Most women find that their periods come to an end usually any time between 40 and 58 years of life, with 51 years of age being kind of the average age for menopause. And officially, we're considered to be in menopause by the time that your last period was 12 months ago. Does that make sense? So you need to have had no periods for a year to be considered that you're into menopause. Menopause is caused by the loss of all of the remaining follicles in the ovaries, which contain eggs. And when those follicles die, our ovaries no longer produce estrogen or progesterone. So the hormones that are sort of involved here are definitely estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone as well. So in the lead up to menopause, it's common for periods to become irregular. During this time, some women start to experience some of those telltale symptoms. So things like hot flushes, night sweats, mood swings, sleep disturbances, and things like vaginal dryness. And this can happen 5 to 6 years before periods actually come to an end. So yay for women. There are things that you can do if you're having particularly challenging time with this. Again, go back to your GP and you can assess, whether some medication may be required. But as I said, nutrition plays a huge role in this, and I want to talk a little bit more about this just after this section. So during menopause, our body's metabolism actually slows by around 10%, which is why we tend to find a little bit of extra weight around this time. And again, it tends to sort of move more to like around our visceral area because of the changes in those hormone profiles. It does tend to resemble with pre-menopause. The weight gain tends to be around, for most women, tends to be sort of around thighs and bottom, and sort of maybe arms, where your waist is sort of protected by those by estrogen. And then as estrogen levels start to drop in this time, we start to kind of adapt a bit of I hate saying this, but like a male pattern weight gain, where it's more like around our viscera. It also does affect those falling estrogen levels does affect our bone density as well. And as I said before, we have less protection on our heart. So really important to take some steps around that. So one of the things that I think it's worth considering is looking at increasing your calcium intake, and the calcium requirements do increase by an extra serve around that menopausal time. I think it's from about from 50, I think you get basically 4 serves of dairy or calcium-rich foods. So good sources can include things like a small tub of yogurt, a glass of milk, 40 grams of cheese. For those of you who love the isolane smoothies, as I recommend, that counts as 1 serve of dairy or 1 serve of calcium. So you're going for around 2 to 250 milligrams is considered a good serve of calcium, by the way. For those of you who prefer to not rely solely on dairy foods, a can of salmon with the edible bones in this, really good, and it's the bones that are the source of calcium in tin salmon. 2 cups of leafy greens will usually be one serve of calcium or rich food, 100 grams of tofu and tempeh, and 2 tablespoons of tahini usually will cut it for calcium. And again, if you'd like to kind of have a bit of a safety net, most women-specific multivitamins will cover women's requirements for calcium, or at least most of your requirements. If you know particularly that you're not very onto it when it comes to calcium-containing foods or a variety of those kind of foods. The other foods worth mentioning here are soy. Now, I know soy's got it's a bit controversial, but soy phytoestrogens around this time can actually help to act as natural estrogens. And so because we know things like hot flushes and those symptoms are caused by dropping estrogen levels, eating soy-rich foods, those things like tofu and soy milk, may bring some relief for some women. And as a bonus, it might even reduce our risk of developing heart disease. So again, if you're choosing soy-based products, my advice is look for non-GMO sources of soy if you'd like to include them. And if you think about populations, again, I'm not saying this is a causative effect, but it's definitely worth noting. So, we look at things like the Japanese population, and I'm actually doing a little bit of homework around the blue zone populations that live for a long time. If you look at so Japanese fit into this category. They eat large amounts of soy products. Of course, there's many other variables, right? And genetic backgrounds. But one of the things that features quite heavily is soy-based foods. And it's all in how they're prepared and where they're sourced from. So if you're in this state and you'd like some food and to turn to diet and lifestyle, soy-based products may be a bit of a helping hand right now. The other thing that it would be, again, we've talked about adaptogens, but it would be worth considering including some adaptogens here as well. So things like ashwagandha, the ones I mentioned before, ashwagandha, rhodiola, schizandra, and maca, again, because they balance out women's hormones. They're supporting our body during stressful times, and it's really amazing. So the same adaptogen can have different effects on our body at different times, not just of our lifetimes, but even different times during the day, depending on when you take them, different times of our cycle. So they're pretty amazing.